So what is debatably the biggest match for the All Blacks of the November internationals is taking place. This weekend it is up against Ireland, the side who are number one in the world rankings, and a side that New Zealand have had some brilliant battles out there on the field with, including that World Cup quarterfinal. And in this video, I'm going to be giving my All Blacks XP that I would love to see take to the field this weekend for the match. But jumping straight into it, in the front row, if he is available, I would have number one, Ethan de Groot. Now, of course, we don't really know the extent of why he was in Razor's bad books, but he wasn't able to play last week up against the English, and depending on the severity of whatever it is Ethan de Groot did, will depend on whether he's able to play up against the Irish here. So if he is unavailable, this is where I would have Tamati Williams, but if de Groot is out of the naughty corner, I would have him there as the number one. Number two, Asafo Moore, due to Cody Taylor ending up concussed after only about 4 minutes of the match up against England. It means that they do need a change in their number two jersey, and they've got a little bit of a problem here because Asafo Moore has not had that many minutes throughout 2024, and their third choice option, George Bell, well, he's had hardly any. So it makes it very difficult for those guys to go into the starting lineup and have the type of performances that we've seen from Cody Taylor. But I do think Asafo Moore, even though at times the lineouts can be a little shaky, his physicality and the willingness to put in a big hit could be exactly what the All Blacks need. And in that number three jersey, as Hurricanes teammate, I have got Tyrell Lomax. I think he's a little bit of an underrated member of that front row. A lot of people do look at the size of someone like a Tamati Williams or the skill that we have seen from Cody Taylor over the last 12 months. But Lomax, he's the quiet workhorse, just gets on with the job, does what he needs to out there on the park. But that is my front row. Moving on now to the locking duo. Number four, keeping his spot after last week, I have got the captain, Scott Barrett. I actually thought he had a really strong game up against the English, which now makes about 3 games in a row that Scott Barrett has been performing. So that is great news for the All Blacks, definitely with that locking duo, which during the first matches in July, they had a lot of uncertainty around what was the best combination. But Scott Barrett, he's earned his way into the starting side, and that's who I'd have as the number four. Number five, this is where I've actually got a switch from what we saw up against the English this week. I have got Patrick Tuipulotu. I feel like he can bring a lot to the table up against this Irish side, who will more than likely have the inform Joe McCarthy in there. We might see James Ryan. We might see Tyke Byrne, and you need Tuipulotu in this type of big match. Definitely because we did see a bit of an injury for Tupavai, so there are debates of whether or not he will even be available to be selected in the 23-man side. But I do think Tuipulotu in that game up against Japan, as well as what he did off the bench up against the English, he's done enough to get that starting spot. But moving on to the loose forward trio, this is actually where I don't think we'll see any changes for this contest. I believe they'll go Wallace Satiti, Sam Cane, and Ardie Savea. But of course, I do want to mix it up a little bit compared to what I feel Razor will do. So I have actually gone with the same loose forward trio that I wanted to see up against England, and that is number 6, Samipeni Finau, up against the Japanese. He was one of the standouts in that All Blacks 4-pack last week up against England. They were willing to give him a whole 4 minutes at the end of the game, but during that 4 minutes, we did actually see Finau take on that 6 jersey. We saw Ardie Savea actually go to 7, and then we saw a little tiny bit of Wallace Satiti at number 8, so that should give away what I'm doing with these other 2 positions, number 7, Ardie Savea, and number 8, Wallace Satiti. Now, taking Sam Cane out of the starting lineup, definitely with the way that he played up against Ireland in the quarterfinal of the Rugby World Cup, does seem a little bit strange, but it does make sense when it comes to my bench, so you got to bear with me a little bit there. But I do think that slowly we will see Savea either take on that 7 jersey, or when we see a few players returning from injury, such as Papali, such as Blackadder, then that's when those guys will probably get a little bit more of that open side role. But for now, they also have Peter Lakai, who could find himself somewhere in this 23. It's just going to be very tricky, definitely because the All Blacks only just scraped past England last week. They won't want to do any massive risks here up against the Irish. And I feel like Lakai, even though we know how strong of a player he is, would still be a massive occasion to give him the chance here. But Satiti, that would mean that he is my number 8. He is just a phenomenal talent. No matter where you put him in that loose board trio, he's going to give you 110%, making a lot of meters, putting in the hard hits. He's going to be a future star for the All Blacks. I just really hope he gets through November without any serious injuries. But we move on to the back line, and this is where we will have to see a change in the 9-10 combination due to Beauden Barrett also failing his HIA. So that means he will not be available for the number 10 jersey. But at number 9, this is where I have gone back to Cam Roigard, the same as what we saw up against Japan, and partnering with him, just like that game up against Japan, I have gone with Damian McKenzie. He looked really strong off the bench. McKenzie seemed to add a little bit more control when it came to that back line, and I do think up against the Irish, he could actually really thrive here. Now, they have actually got another player who could fill this role at 10, and that is Harry Plummer. He was added back into the squad due to the Beauden Barrett injury, but I just don't see them starting him in this game. Definitely because the last time we saw Harry Plummer for the All Blacks, he was once again only given a few minutes off the bench for his debut. But McKenzie and Roigard, it's a combination that worked. Up against the Japanese, there was still a few little errors that were coming from that combo, but that does not mean it can't be ironed out a little bit here and do very well up against the Irish. Moving on to the centre pairing, this is where I don't think you can afford to make any really big changes. So I've gone number 12, Jordie Barrett, number 13, Rieko Ioane. If there are already 2 changes happening in that 9 and 10 combo, making switch after switch here with the other positions, I think would be a massive risk. Jordie Barrett not having his best game up against the English, but it was his first game back after a pretty long layoff with an injury. Rieko Ioane, his hand got sliced up. He butchered an opportunity for the All Blacks to score a try, but I'm hoping they'll have a better game here up against the Irish. Jordie Barrett, of course, going to Leinster in 2025, so going head-to-head with a few of his future teammates. Now, I will mention, though, in these 2 positions, I feel like 12, Quinn Tupaia, if it was the option of bringing someone from the All Blacks XB, he would be the perfect fit for that jersey. And then number 13, you could even make the argument AJ Lamb would be a pretty awesome player to give a chance at number 13. But they have only added a couple guys from that All Blacks XB side, being Harry Plummer, Brodie McAllister, and then also that return of Ruben Love back into the side. But moving on to the back 3, and is this where we do see Ruben Love? No, unfortunately not for my lineup. I have instead got Caleb Clark out on the left wing. He didn't have his best game up against England, but I feel like if he can get ball in hand a little bit more compared to what we saw in their match last week, he will find a lot more success. Number 14, Mark Talia. When they finally decided to play Talia on the wing that he's played all throughout Super Rugby, he actually went well. And that is no surprise because he did play week in, week out for the Blues out on the right and was having massive success. He beats defenders. He had no right to score that last try, slip him through the English defence and help him win the All Blacks the match in the end. And that was his second try of the contest, also scoring early on from the assist of Wallace Satiti. Number 15, this is where I've stuck with Will Jordan. Now, I mentioned about it on the All Blacks prediction that we did for Scott Robertson's side, that Will Jordan, he got caught out of position a few times, but that was mainly because he was having to chase those chips from Beauden Barrett, whereas in this game, I don't see McKenzie going with that same tactic, so that will allow Jordan to really set himself, work out where the gaps are, because that man is extremely dangerous when he's running the ball from the back, and I don't see this game being any different. But that is the starting XV. Now we look through at the bench. Number 16, this is where I've got George Bell, although in an ideal world, I would have loved to see someone like a Ricky Riccatelli get that chance at 16, mainly for the accuracy of his lineouts, plus being able to use that rolling maul extremely well. Could have worked quite nicely for the ABs here. Number 17, this is where I've got Ofa Tuangafasi. Now, I know a lot of people have gone De Groot in their starting side and Tuangafasi at number 17, which seems pretty harsh on Mighty Williams. And I will say, I don't think Williams had a terrible game up against the English. It's just more so if De Grooter's back in, I think they'll give him priority in that starting side. And I do also feel Tuangafasi had a really strong game off the bench last week. So I like that combination of him alongside Basilio Tosi, which is who I've gone with at number 18. And it seemed like that combo worked a lot better than the Basilio Tosi and Tamaiti Williams duo. So that is why I've gone with those two. Nothing against Tamaiti Williams, like I said. Just seemed to be the chemistry was a bit better with these two. Number 19, this is where I've gone Sam Derry. He didn't get to play up against the English, and worst comes to worst, if it's tricky to get him in that locking duo, I think you could also look at moving Scott Barrett to 6, just because the man that I've got at number 20 doesn't actually play blindside flanker, and that is Sam Cane. Now, like I mentioned earlier on, quite a few people would like to see maybe Peter Lakai get the chance off the bench here, or maybe even Christian Leo Willie, another man who was training with the side, being that injury cover. But the reason I've gone Sam Cane off the bench is the exact same reason that I went with Patrick Tuipulotu off the bench last week up against the English, and that is for the experience, the calm head at the end of a game. It is a massive reason that the All Blacks won their game up against England. Having Tuipulotu be able to settle everyone down, use his experience to his advantage, and help them get over the line. Sam Cane, like I said, the last time he played up against the Irish, he was a man on fire. And if he can bring that to the last 20 minutes of this game, that could be exactly what New Zealand need to finish the job. So I've gone Sam Cane, and that allows me to go with Sam Derry, the two Sams, as the other two forward replacements. And the back replacements, I've actually gone with the opposite theory of what I did with Sam Cane, and that is I've gone with the inexperienced players to give them a shot to really add something different later on up against Ireland. So I've gone Cortez Aratama, number 22 Harry Plummer, and number 23 Ruben Love. A lot of people have been wanting to see that man back after getting 2 on debut up against the Japanese. He can cover 15. We've now learnt that he can play out on the right wing if need be. Harry Plummer, he covers 10 as well as 12. So that is pretty much everywhere in your backline covered, with the exception maybe of that number 13 jersey. Some people have said they want to see Caleb Clark in that role, so perhaps that is what could be needed if this backline does suffer injuries. But I just like the idea of giving these younger players a chance up against a top side like Ireland. It could really help them develop and teach them a lot heading into 2025. But that is my All Blacks XV as well as the reserves. Do let me know, of course, who you guys would have in your starting lineup for this game up against the Irish. We are only a few days away. It is going to be an absolutely electric atmosphere when those two sides go head to head, and we are going to be covering it on the channel as well. So if you are new, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all for the next one.